In Diablo 2, there's a bit of a love-hate relationship with the Sorceress radial skills. Some are universally loved, like Static Field, due to its sheer power, others are often heavily dismissed, like the misaligned Frost Nova. And then there is the Nova spell itself, which, if you linger around long enough in the community, you'll find people who list it among the worst skills, while others tout it as one of the best. So today we're going to explore these three skills, their uses, and even some extremely common misunderstandings about them. Starting with the oddball of the pack, Frost Nova, the cheaper of the two Nova skills proper, and also the least damaging, though it does come with the perk of chilling enemies. The big problem Frost Nova used to have, and the stigma that still sticks with it, is the fact that it simply does not pack a lot of damage, and there's only a few ways to directly boost cold damage by percent, though this also comes from a bit of a misunderstanding about mechanics, namely the fact that it's pretty easy to ensure that any non-cold immunes are automatically going to be taking double damage from any of your cold skills. This is because the Sorceress has the natural skill of Cold Mastery that reduces the resistances of any non-cold immune drastically, meaning the listed damage on this Nova can easily be listed as double against your enemies you'll be farming against, and makes it an excellent pairing with Frozen Orb or Blizzard for mono-elemental builds, provided you have the mana to keep it up. Though, as with most cold builds, it still does have the drawback of being pretty impotent in areas with lots of cold immunes, like much of Act 5 unfortunately, and with how high cold immunities tend to sit, even with Conviction and lower resist aiding you, you will struggle in those zones. Its cousin, Nova, despite having a very similar graphic, radius, and casting style, and yes, even casting speed, has a sort of inverse situation in many cases. It's much easier to increase the damage of, but a bit more difficult to lower the enemy resists with. Though with the existence of Infinity, and to a lesser degree stuff like Crescent Moon, it's a bit more commonly found and accessible in the wild due to the overwhelming popularity of these items. With 2.4, Nova got some bumps as well, most notably the addition of the Static Field synergy. This increases Nova's maximum damage potential quite a bit, but it also puts it in a similar point range as its frosty cousin, albeit with less prerequisites for its synergies, letting it sit at exactly 60 points to fully optimize. With this higher damage, it's able to protect you fairly easily by causing reaction locks, and while not as consistent as Chill, it's still more than enough to keep you alive in the fray. Like Frost Nova, this is very often combined with similar elemental skills though, in this case usually Energy Shield and Telekinesis though, with remaining points going into Warmth to keep you topped off. This can lead to a similar issue, but with lightning immunes being hard to deal with, but due to the lower general lightning resist on lightning immunes, you will find getting enemies into actually destroyable ranges to be much simpler, doubly so if you use a self-wielded Infinity. Though this does come with a slower casting speed than most more well-known 200 faster cast rate variants of this build. But you will find it much more consistent for difficulty-wide clears, especially if you give your mercenary insight for mana. The last of the three, and easily the most complicated, is Static Field, a skill that will not kill anything, but that pretty much every sorceress will grab at least 1 point in for utility. This is because it is essentially a magical crushing blow effect, removing a percent of the enemy's life. However, unlike Crushing Blow, this works at full efficiency even at a range, and more importantly, it scales with player count, unlike Crushing Blow. This means that 25% is 25% of current life, not base life values. Now, where Static gets fiddly is in its interactions with Lightning Resist, Conviction, and minus enemy Lightning Resist from gear, since it deals this percent damage in Lightning and it doesn't bypass resists. On the simplest side, if the enemy has positive Lightning Resist after everything is taken into account, it would behave like you think it does. The enemy resistances reduce the damage by that amount. It's fairly straightforward. Where it gets wobbly is whenever you start moving into negative resistances. If Conviction or lower resist reduce an enemy's resistances to negative numbers, and there are no other factors in play, then Static Field will do its flat 25% damage and not concern itself with things other than that. However, if you have equipment reducing the enemy lightning resist into the negatives, it will increase it. This means if you get the enemy to negative 100% lightning resist without using Conviction, then you'll deal a 50% damage hit. Now, when you combine these, it gets really weird, and there's a whole formula for it, since if Conviction is dropping them to, say, negative 20%, and you have a minus 100% from gear, you'll only do a little under 43% damage on a hit because Conviction and lower resist are eating up a bit of the functionality. If you want to see how the chart looks and the formula, I'll be sure to include a link in the description below, which also has some interesting tables related to how weird the Nightmare and Hell limits actually are, since the 33% limit in Nightmare and the 50% limit in Hell, for how low you can take them, is a limit on when the spell can affect them, not a limit on how much damage they can take. So there are situations in Hell difficulty where you can drop things down to nearly a quarter of their life. Thankfully, plus lightning damage is a lot simpler with Static Field though, because it does nothing to it. You just never have to worry about it in that regard. It does literally nothing. All that said though, do you love or hate Nova? And how often do you use Static Field? Mention it down below, and as always, keep gaming, have fun, and peace out. This has been Alzorath. Bye.